the specialist day of the month, the most special day of the month. This is the Roger Dean Artist Study stream. You can see floating above me in a psychedelic way some of the paintings. These are the paintings we're going to look at today. As if that wasn't psychedelic enough. Look at that. Got the desaturated ones too. I'm going to do mostly thumbnails, I think. And I've got some watercolor. This is the only image of his that I was really familiar with because when I was in college, I learned that my dad had a gold mine of vinyl like records in the basement. Growing up, I had no idea. You know, we listened to, if I was in my mom's car, we listened to the 90s station. And if I was in my dad's car, we listened to AM talk radio or sports radio. And for 18, 19 years, I had no clue. We were sitting on this treasure trove, a few boxes of records. And in it was this one, which I'm a fan of, the music and the picture. So this was my kind of, the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega of my Roger Dean knowledge. But I always liked this. And I think I probably listened to this record because of the cover. So, you know, you get a whole bunch of, a couple boxes of records and I didn't just listen to them, you know, one after the other in order. I flipped through and whatever looked cool is what I would listen to. And this one looked pretty cool. Also, I learned that these are watercolors. Looking at them in preparation for the study, like these ones up here, looking for that, I thought they might be oils, but they're watercolor. So that's extra good because that's the kind of painting that I do. Let me see here. So I'm noticing in this one, I like the separation of foreground and background. I like that he's using, I think it must be ink. I like that he leaves this little kind of triangle up in the top left. There's like a little window here. A passageway. Looks like the horizon line is right smack in the middle. Butterfly right here in the front. Why do I write so small? Does my work ever get big? The biggest piece I ever made was 8 feet by 33 feet. It's a big woodcut. So yeah, I work at all different sizes. But I want to fit a few of these on here. I want to keep this so I can kind of look at it in one go. I'm thinking of doing a grayscale version next to it too. But this isn't that small. I mean, this is if this was a notebook that had lines on it, this would probably be the size. Yeah, this is a thumbnail. Like this was the Miyazaki artist study from, I don't know, maybe a year ago. To just do these thumbnails, these color studies. I like how he does the mountains in the back and he does the same thing in other pieces where it almost looks like a photo negative or photo effect of some sort. I can see why that would speak to you, Plums Inc., because of the, like you do a lot of that, the negative image of your colored pencils. I wonder if is that like what got you on the track to doing that? But yeah, it is interesting. His shadow colors, I think, is the thing. He puts, like in this one, his shadow colors are blue and purple, kind of, I guess, reflecting the sky and the water. And it's a nice contrast to the kind of warm orange of these, like the islands. For me, for this one, it's the ink in the foreground and the paint in the background. I feel validated mixing ink and watercolor in my work. But every time I've tried to do that, ink in the foreground, watercolor in the background, it just doesn't feel right. Something about it doesn't work. So maybe that's a thing to pay attention to. I think he does this in several of his pieces. Maybe none of the ones we've got here. This one kind of in the front there. I guess this one too. Okay. I gotta think about that. Foreground, background. And the first thing will be ink, watercolor. The black foreground that grounds the ethereal background. That's a good way of putting it, Plums Inc. Yeah, I think that's well observed. The contrast of it makes it more ethereal, right? We have maybe the more solid black. Another thing to mark down then. Always looking at contrasts and focal points in these pieces. So I'm going to make contrasts. Grounded versus ethereal. I'll say solid versus ethereal. Atmospheric perspective. Yeah, that's the right. That's the technique. Yeah. So the atmospheric perspective, you can see it. So it goes from the ink to here, and that's one step, I think, and then even more back here. So these far background mountains or islands, even more so. So the atmospheric perspective, that's the more atmosphere that is between the viewer and the object, the more the object will tend towards the color of the atmosphere of the sky. So there's definitely atmospheric perspective in here. The contrast between the smooth surfaces and textured surfaces is interesting. The ocean and the sky are so smooth that the rocks and the trees feel more tangible. That's another good one. Solid versus ethereal, and that is made with partly to the ink and watercolor, and partly with textures. Very interesting. Look at the shadow in the very center on those mountains on the island. In this one, the shadow, it looks it looks really bright. It looks luminous. And yet it's quite dark. It's actually way more contrast there than I would have guessed. Oh, color. So within his shadow forms, like there's a lot of variation within those shadow forms. Variegated, and yet like maybe putting this light and this dark within the shadow forms, it makes the shadows look like they have more bits that pop. Get that luminous feel. It's got to be difficult getting that luminosity because they're surrounded all by light stuff, and yet they feel really vibrant. And it must be kind of mixing in little bits of that darker value and the darker color. It's not even a darker value, right? Because the value is the same. And I guess there's some slight variation in the value in the darks, but mixing in a little bit of that different color, it really makes it vibrant. That's amazing. Yeah, color is a trickster, for sure. Getting contrast with saturation instead of shade. Yeah, that's a good way to say it too. Yeah. I'm gonna put that down. Contrast with textures, contrast with saturation. I want to go in and spot the blacks. That's the good next step. Looks like a bit of a lost edge on that butterfly wing. It's interesting how that butterfly is located right on top of that black shape, and it's the black butterfly kind of emerging from it, or maybe it kind of brings more attention there. But think about what's the focal point in this piece. I think, to me, the focal point are these mountains in the center. But I wonder if maybe the butterfly is supposed to be a bit of one as well. This is really nicely framed. And everything is pointing into this. So this must be the focal point. I think I'm pretty sold on my initial instinct that the focal point are these center mountains. We've got all these rocks pointing to it. We've got the tree and all of this framing it. The point of that foreground rock is pointing at the background mountains, and the wave or whatever is pointing similarly. Oh yeah, and there's the this line of the water, like the ripple, is bringing us right in there. So the idea of this piece, maybe the story of it, is maybe there's something mysterious or interesting happening here. Like maybe this is a place we want to explore. When I was in school, we had an exercise that we would do sometimes, where we would find the thing closest to us, and then we would draw a line through the composition to the thing that was furthest away. I think we can do that in here. The butterfly is the closest. And then I think if we trace a path, we would go back through that ripple to here, and then be back through to these, or back across to these ones if they're further away. So maybe passages. Thinking about foreground to background, the ink versus the watercolor, maybe there's pathways, passages. There's definitely a passage bringing us back through. I don't know why, but for me, it's interesting that the closer to you, the darker, and the further, the lighter. Yeah, so I think generally the darker things will be more salient, like they move towards us, and then the lighter things tend to recede. But I think that's probably an effort to make it give it more depth, and I think it really does. The butterfly seems superfluous to you. Yeah, I'm really interested in that butterfly and its kind of function in the composition. I mean, maybe we're meant to identify with it. Maybe because it kind of looks like that path that I just traced. The butterfly's kind of on it. It kind of looks like it's flying in that direction towards the right where the rocks go, and then they kind of turn back to the left. So maybe we're meant to associate with that and kind of fly up here and cut to the left and go back through the composition. And this is going to be not a complex color study. I'm gonna break it down into the kind of rough colors. I wonder maybe the butterfly is meant to hint at more life happening in this scene because everything we see is rocks and plants. But maybe the presence of the butterfly is just to let us know that there's life in these hills. So there's a few little triangles. Kind of noticing here on the left side, there's the blue shape. There's an upside down triangle, and then that mountain is a right side up triangle, or pointing up against the pointing down of the overall shape, like that negative shape in between the tree. And then there's another one down here, and even on the left side, kind of a triangle there. And the shapes of the mountains are triangular. Rock, the outcrop. Maybe that's the main shape idea in this. High key foreground and low key background. Right, so the foreground has the most variety of contrast, right? The most contrast in the fore, and the background is more even. It's that black really makes it pop. I think the butterfly is the one little detail that adds a bit of tension or dynamism to an image that's otherwise harmonious. Yeah, that's a good point. So not superfluous, right? It gives it a little bit of tension, even the way that it's framed, right? Because I keep thinking about how it almost blends in here, and there's this like little sliver there, even with the leg. Or I guess that's part of the wing, but there's this yellow that's almost the same color as this rock. So there's definitely some tension in here, and I find even the way it's kind of close to the edge, the way that it overlaps on here. You're right. It's much less harmonious than the rest. So maybe that's the contrast that makes this feel even more harmonious by comparison. Maybe that's something to think about. I'm going to write that down in pencil. Harmony versus tension. Maybe we can look for that in the other ones. Pretty much 3 main colors in this. There's the blues, there's the greens, and the kind of browns. So the color palette is harmonious as well. Oh, this color on the tree is interesting, on the trunk. I think that's the only place in the whole piece that has that color. It's kind of I guess it's a more gray version. I wonder if this is meant to help us jump from here to here. But I'm not really sure. It feels more desaturated, maybe even more like kind of blown out, overexposed, maybe. Just notice the tiny purple flowers in the bottom left. Hey, purple flowers in the bottom left. Is that what these are? Purple is echoed on one of the rocks to the right. Oh, up in here. Oh, now that's interesting. That bit there. So there's just a little splash of this purple. I guess this purple, yeah, there it is. This purple makes its appearance kind of here and there. It goes unnoticed. It's the unsung hero. of the composition. Kind of an accent, but it's almost imperceptible down here, right? An interesting mid-tone. Yeah, because everything is, I mean, what do we have? We have green and brownish orange and blue. And these little flecks. And there's a little bit of that purple in here too. So maybe we jump from here to here, here to here. If we're looking at those purples, we get that passage shown to us. So the directionality of just the forms bring us through here. And then that contrast between the foreground and the background kind of makes us jump between the two. And then that little subtle bit of the purple, the implied path of the butterfly maybe. All these little decisions adding up, making our eye do what the artist wants it to do. So doing these little thumbnails, these color thumbnails, they're not meant to be beautiful works of art. The idea is by putting the shapes down, you start to see things that you wouldn't see just from looking at it. And this is, you know, full of inaccuracy as well, but that's not the point. Point is, by doing this exercise, things become revealed. Things reveal themselves. The shadow side is bluish green and the top side is yellow. I want to zoom in a little bit. I just want to think about how he's handling these trees here. It's like almost a purple shadow side and the yellow lit side. So I think I'm going to do just a little study of that just to think about the color. And I want to look at it in grayscale first. So I'm doing the tree on the right. There's actually a lot more purple in this than you see at first glance. The highlights on the tops of the trees look almost the same color as the rocks. Yeah, they're definitely close to that, especially here, the tops of these rocks. More of that harmony. It turns out that the purple is everywhere in this piece. Because originally I just thought it was a few of those flecks, because that's what's evident at the beginning, but it's actually all over the place. I really like how this black works, just in this thumbnail, I think. Much like the butterfly, we have these fish. Now, are we the fish? There's a lot of similarities between this one and the last one, so I think this is a good place to go next. Some differences too. Maybe accents is the word I'm trying to think of. Color accents. I'm not sure. So the stuff that is provisional, put in pencil. I might go over it later. This one has a lower horizon line, maybe at the 1/3 mark or so. Oh, noticed this little pyramid way in the back. Come back to that later. That might be that's probably an important thing. Got like this up here. More triangles in this. Got the moon behind the moon or the setting sun. And that pyramid in the back. This one has very little ink in it. All the ink in this is the stippling, it looks like, just in the foreground. Just on some of these rocks. Oh, and there's a little path here. Little trail. The stars are blue, not white. Yeah, they are. That's right. And they only are in a band. So there's no stars up above a certain point. So that top area is all just empty. Yeah, the stars are light blue. And they're just circles. There's no lens flare, there's no little bursts. Through here. But there's nothing, no stars up top. I think, because usually you would expect, right, there'd be more stars higher up, because the less the light affects it. So that gives it kind of an otherworldliness, right? The way these fish overlap, especially these two, it's difficult to distinguish. Like, it's obvious that they're fish, but there's not a lot of, maybe there is. There's not a lot of contrast within them, I think. We'll look at that in a second. There's a lot going on here. Like, this island is really fully realized, much more so than the last one. There's a bridge. And there's the waterfall with the rocks and stuff. So I wonder, maybe this is either a natural bridge or this place is inhabited. And the fish are not, either the fish are not underwater or this whole thing is underwater. It doesn't even look like this is water here. Almost looks like some kind of a salt flat or something. We have, like, because this water is very clearly a blue, and it's enclosed. Some lagoon or something, but like, what is this? What is this material? I find a similarity in these two pieces in that an observer is invited to consider something familiar, the foreground in the first, the sky, the ocean hybrid in the second, and contrast it with something otherworldly. Yeah, that's another one of those contrasts, right? Maybe the solid versus the ethereal. Concept, content, context. Let's see. Let's think about that for a second. That contrast that you're talking about. Otherworldly, familiar. So the solid versus ethereal, and maybe the another word for that would be the familiar and the otherworldly. The bridge looks skeletal. It almost has like joints to it. I can't tell if it's supposed to be constructed or if it's like a tree fell over or something. Yeah, it has this kind of looks like it could be a bone. Maybe some tendons or something. And so lush all around here. Whereas the rest of it, it's not a very lush scene. So this is kind of an oasis. And Crochet, going back to what you're saying, the observer is invited. Like, I feel like we're invited. Like the butterfly and the fish are the things that are supposed to be the familiar. You say in this one, the sky ocean hybrid. But this seems like this is almost unfamiliar, right? In this kind of color band. Perhaps it's a heavier atmosphere than oxygen and lighter than water, and that's what the fish are swimming in, like heavy water. Oh yeah. Could be that. Like a thick atmosphere. But the water can still be water. Big chicken wing. It has that kind of turn to it, right? Like a chicken wing has. It does look skeletal, and the rock above it looks like it has tendons stretching across. This one here. Yeah, there's like striations or something, right? The cleft rocks are kind of strange, almost reminiscent of the scene in the Bible where Moses smites the rock and it splits and gushes forth water. Oh, yeah. Kind of that feel. Hey, what is this? Now I see a face. Is that pareidolia? I see a face here. I see a figure. The arms. There's a thumb. He's given us the thumbs up. Is it just me? Does anybody else see that? Maybe I was primed by the Moses reference. It's just me? I don't know. I see there's a eyes, there's a nose, there's a beard. Yeah, these stars, the star bubbles, like they read as stars at first, but like thinking about it now, I guess they are. They're otherworldly stars. Stars from a different galaxy are filtered through a different kind of atmosphere. We haven't even talked about this. It's the path through this composition. Here through these fish, jump from there, we jump back to this, and we jump back to this, right? This is very inside a fish tank. That's a good way to think about this, yeah. And maybe this is just one of those little sculptures that they put in a fish tank. But like, what if we're all living in a big fish tank? Oh man. Yeah, wow, man, wow. That's interesting. There's a little bit of this kind of pinkish color from the rocks. Just in front of that, giving us another connection. I do see a face in the rock to the left of the main mass. This one. There's a mouth. An eyebrow. Further. This one here. This smiley face. Squinty eyes. Little smiley face here. Little eyes. Further. Oh. Yeah, I like this face. There's the nose, the two eyes. Yeah, we're totally the fish. We're being observed. Let me see. I wanted to put this up. Wow. Okay, another unexpected turn. I didn't think that the sky was that dark. I guess it is. The big dark sky, and then... So this is split up into two chunks. But then the some of the foliage and the fish are of a similar darkness as the sky. Looking at these desaturated versions is so instructive. The lightest parts would be on the left. Oh! There's a diagonal cutting through. In the foreground. And it leads us back towards that pyramid. The foreground is split into almost a white and a light gray. Here. Here. So the foreground has... This bit is a little bit darker, and this bit is lighter. At least the sea or the ground plane. This is all basically the same value here. And group this. This connects here. And then so there's three big areas of value, and then in this island in the middle there's a lot of variation. That makes me feel that this would be the focal point, the primary one. This pyramid back here is an accent. Maybe to give it more depth and communicate the vastness of the space. This isn't a home fish tank. This is an aquarium. This one is more comfortable for you to look at than the other. Yeah, that's I tend to agree. I think if I had to visit one of these two places, if I had to visit here or here, I think I would prefer this one. Maybe because there's more going on that island. Like it looks like maybe it would be a kind of nice place to be, whereas this one seems much more barren, at least for human habitation. It'd be difficult even to get on one of those islands. And there's something about those shadows that just is a little unsettling. Talking about the harmony versus tension. So let's think about that. The harmony versus tension in this one. I don't feel a lot of tension in this one. I feel like this one is all harmony. I mean, there's even a path, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's even a path here that makes it seem like there's somebody walking on that. Otherwise it would be overgrown probably, right? It looks really path-like. So maybe that's a little hint as to the nature of this landscape. Like maybe there are people there. Because those fish don't have legs. It's a strange reaction to you because the previous one is just humming the mantra of harmony to you. Yeah, different people see different things. Yeah, to me this is the calmer world. And the first one is unsettling. I think in the first one it has to be those shadow shapes. Or the colors of the shadow. That it just feels like there's something more otherworldly about this one than there is about this one. I should mention, for those of you just joining, this is the monthly artist study stream. We do one every month. This is a Channel Points redemption. This artist was chosen by Plums Inc. It's an artist that I was only a little bit familiar with before, and that's how most of these artist studies go. Next month's artist study is specifically Rembrandt's cross-hatching. And then we have Anders Zorn coming up in 2 months. So if you like this kind of thing and you want to pick the artist that we study, save up those channel points, watch with increased intensity, because the channel points accumulate faster the more intensely you watch. Squint your eyes a little bit and lean forward, and those channel points will rack up before you know it. And yeah, all the previous artist studies are up on my YouTube channel. There's got to be maybe 15 artist study streams so far. A little bit lighter at the top. So it gets a little bit, and in top right, like lighter to darker to lighter again. So there's this really darker band of sky. At least it looks like it in the color. I wonder if it shows up in the grayscale. Yeah, it's there. There's that darker line that goes from the very left edge straight across to the top of that central rocky oasis. And so that seems to me another indicator that our focal point is supposed to be here. This brings us straight in from the side. We've got the diagonals of the fish. We've got that diagonal where the value change from the kind of almost white to the light gray, bringing us that way. We stop there on the way to the back. And there's an inverted triangle again, opposite that back pyramid. So the pyramid is drawing this too far to the left. This pyramid here, the triangle with the circle, draws attention. And then there's an inverted triangle shape of that light value. See how the green plays in. Some islands of green. Biggest mass on the left here. And then there's a washed out green on the right by that path. A little bit on the fish. Fish are mostly, they're green and yellow, orange. When I first looked at this, the first thing that I noticed was the fish. But the longer I look at it, the less I notice the fish. The fish kind of seem to blend off and become less important. But they're like the entryway, and then they welcome you into the painting. Then they kind of recede and let you enjoy your new environment. That's a cool effect. I don't know if any of you have noticed that for the course of however long we've been looking at this. That's what I'm noticing right now. I wonder what kind of watercolors he used. I wonder what brands would have been available. I'm just gonna leave this white on the left here. I think the accent color, if we're going under the hypothesis that there's an accent color, in this one it was the purple, and in this one it might be that yellow orange. We see it along the bottom of right above the horizon line, the bottom of the sky, a little bit in the foliage and on those fish. There's little flecks over on the right by that path. And yeah, ... for stars. There's a moon in there, but like I said before, the point isn't to make beautiful thumbnails. The point is to, in the act of making the thumbnails, reveal things that would not be revealed by just looking alone. Oh yeah, there's turquoise everywhere. I guess that would be the stars are turquoise, and that strip. But I think that the turquoise crochet is maybe more prevalent. I don't know. I feel like the turquoise is more than an accent in this piece, but maybe that's just me. I think that the turquoise feels more harmonious with the other colors. The orange kind of feels more out of place. So maybe that's why I'm seeing it. And these stars are just little circles, which is cool. The colors in this image are a bit different from what appeared on the album, and the colors in the album are a bit more muted and earthy. Well, now that's interesting. I guess there must be text up at the top. Is this for Yes, or is this for Asia? I think was another band he did album covers for. Compared to this, all right, let's see. Oh, so this is a Yes album. And thank you for that link. Let's see. So here it is. I guess this would be the front and the back. So when you opened up the album, you would see the other stuff. So you don't even see the fish on the front. And when it's cropped like this definitely becomes the focal point. And yeah, it is all far more muted. All of this stuff that is kind of pinkish, at least in my image, is much more gray. And yeah, the stars are different too. Now I wonder if, because sometimes you get these images online and the colors are a little off. I wonder if the one that I got is just too saturated, but I can't see that being the case. It's a very, very different image when you crop it like that. But I gotta say, I like it better in the one that we've been looking at. I prefer it like this, just as a painting. That path becomes more prominent. I don't see the face anymore. Cool, thank you for sharing that. That is instructive. Let's see which one to do next. This one. Now I was thinking about this one, crochet. I was thinking about this in actually I was thinking about all of these kind of in the context of the group of 7 who we studied probably about a year ago, the Canadian painters. I would have loved to see this painted by what is it, Lauren Harris. It kind of reminds me of, in a strange way, of this, or perhaps this. I feel like Roger Dean and Lauren Harris have a little bit of overlap, maybe with their compositions. Maybe not this one so much. Very striking, yeah. I can see this like being painted in the style of Roger Dean, or more interestingly, I can see this Roger Dean one being painted in the style of Lauren Harris. So that was my first thought when I saw this painting. But I think we'll look at I think we should look at this one because I think it's the logical next step from these two. And then after that, maybe we'll have time for one more. So this is quite similar. The first two, it has this strong foreground framing. It has weird islands. But this one doesn't have any animals. This is the same kind of tree as this one. Almost the same tree. A little bit of ink on the foreground, but more like the second one we looked at, where the ink was just the stippling. And then it looks to me like the foreground is dominated by green, the midground is orange, and the background this beautiful purple. Feels like there's always such a huge contrast in color saturation between foreground and background. Yeah, let me see. I think do I have saturation written down? Watercolor, texture. I'll add that to this. Passages, saturation. This one suspends believability for you. How do you mean that in comparison to the first two? I love floating islands just as a subject matter in general. You're a sucker for magic, fantasy, floating rocks. Yeah, I agree. Something about floating islands is... I'm interested that all of them are on the horizon. I think all of the floating islands break the horizon line. I wonder what the point is for that. Maybe to express kind of a stability, or maybe to give attention. When you have that, and maybe it's just purely for composition. Because I feel like if any one of these was purely below or purely above and didn't intersect the horizon, it would kind of make it strangely static. I mean, it's all in a line, which you'd think would be more of a static decision, but like isolating them might hinder the composition a lot. So I feel like we have this kind of flow through. It's almost like a Mobius strip or something. You can just keep flowing through a big loop. And then, as with the first one at least, this shape is framing this bit. I like that there's a big empty space here. Now, was this one an album cover too? And now I'm wondering if there's an album where this is cut down the middle. We have like, yes. And just this part. Asian looking trees. Oh, he grew up in, he lived in Hong Kong for a while, right? I saw a little bit about him when I was looking at images. Again, a ripple leading us into the background. Oh yeah, really subtle here. Kind of a nice S-curve. The floating islands are ack. You're not a fan, Crochet. They're wrong being on the same plane, or maybe right. See now that decision is the thing that I'm fixated on, which maybe means that it's not super successful because it's distracting. Like that's the thing that I've been focusing on, and so maybe. But like I said, I think it'd be tricky to put them, to isolate them. But maybe they're also. They feel okay. Hold on a second. I'll put the value study up in just a second. I feel like they're all in the same plane this way, and then they're also these three feel like they're kind of the same distance away, and even these, like this is the only one really that feels, maybe this little one. These feel much further, but these ones all feel like they're almost on the same plane. Maybe this is a little further back, and this is a little closer, but I don't know. Not by much. I do like the angle, the axis of this rock and the axis of these rocks. This gives us almost like a linear perspective. And then this one cuts it to match this. I'm really glad we have the one tree on the mainland, which gives us a better sense of scale and distance of the other island that has trees. Yeah, that's right. We have the big tree and then this tree. Otherwise, we'd have no reference point for the scale and distance of the islands. Yeah, that is right. We can kind of compare the size of that and the size of this, and it lets us know somewhat how far back that is. You think they're just smaller? You think they're on the same plane? They're just smaller? The only surprise, usually these ones surprise me a lot. The only surprise to me is that in the very bottom of the ocean, that really saturated blue, right underneath the floating tree island, like the closest part to us, that isn't darker. It looks much darker in the color than the sea directly above it. It's all basically the same value. Everything else looks about right to me. Maybe that yellow in the top of the tree feels a bit lighter in the color one than it does in the value. The yellows and the blues are the deceptive ones. The two tones on the pine needles are strange. Interesting to see the grayscale. It's subtle in the grayscale, and less so in the color. The value is very, very similar. Triangle here. And then the horizon line on this one cuts right across the center again. So more of this framing. I gotta write down framing. Because the horizon is blocked on both sides. On the one side here by the rocks, and on the other side here by the tree. When I get a minute, zoom a lot in on the pine needles. All right, I'll do that in just a second. That's a good idea. I love how his trees twist around. They're kind of the Asian trees, like that. The tree has this kind of movement here, and then it's countered by the movement of the trunk in this way. So like the foliage makes this kind of shape, kind of line, back and around. Down here, got the rocks, different axes. And this is interesting down in here. Interesting texture. I'm gonna zoom in on that too. Okay, I have to remember to zoom in on two places, the pine needles and then the shadow in the rocks here. And so by drawing this, I noticed it. So again, I'm trying to make the case for doing these thumbnails in a in a not so precious way. Yeah, bonsai like, that's right. Enhance. Maybe the ends of the pine needles are just browning. Maybe the parts closer to the stem are greener, and as they get out, they change color. Can you ask why I'm drawing so small? Yeah, I'm just doing the thumbnails. Yeah, they're thumbnails. Let's see what Tiny Dragon said. I meant to allow the artist to focus on the composition of the piece rather than getting bogged down. Yeah, exactly. I'm interested in these in a bigger picture. I'm not looking at the tiny little details. I want to see how the thing works together. And so the smaller you draw it, the quicker you can do it. And you get a more of a zoomed out overview look of it. So I'm interested in that. I kind of liked this little tree from this first one, so I did it a little bit bigger. But if I did these large, like I could spend a few streams trying to recreate the painting. But I want to look at several of these paintings all in one stream and see what I can glean from it. So the point of these isn't to make beautiful paintings. The point of these is as a learning aid. To facilitate how I look, if that makes sense. And maybe they're yellow because of the sunlight. Yeah, I would have thought that at the beginning, but then looking at the value study here, they seem to be almost the same value as the rest of them. So I'm not sure. I think if it was the sunlight, maybe they would be brighter. But then in saying that, I glance over, and at least this part here sure does look like sunlight on these. So I'm not really sure. Ironically, we get a better sense of the bigger picture by drawing small. That's right. Whoa, it's one of life's great paradoxes. You never done this? You want to try? This is a lot of fun, Suze. Yeah, this is a really good way to study other artists. I haven't noticed any signatures in these paintings. Sometimes we see like the Odilon Radon paintings. There was like the tiny little signature smuggled into his works. I like this. Look at that texture. That's pretty wild. What is that? I guess the purple, he uses that a lot on his Terminator. Maybe that's his kind of transition color. And so this is watercolor. I'm wondering how he got these marks. I wonder if he scratched it away, or if he painted that, like painted right up to the edge. That must be scratched away, right? He must take like the back of his paintbrush and just go in and after the fact. Maybe a razor blade. Blues and greens popping out of that shadow. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this shadow, huh? And the green... Oh, this triangle here, the front part of the foreground, that green kind of meshes into that shadow we were just looking at. Kind of one shape. I guess a soft edge between them. I like how it's broken up with these rocks. And again, I like the axis of the rocks. Green in that tree trunk too. The shadow side of that tree trunk is all like green. I feel like there's a continuity of colors between all of his works. Like his palettes, I think the color palette, there's some crossover between these. Kind of like that. These islands are almost the sort of pinkish of these rocks. A little bit more orange to them. Water is lighter, and then it gets for here. Deeper color. I don't know about the depth of water itself. A little bit of that reflected in that shadow shape. Lines going through here. And there's more purple in these rocks too. The sky is really light in this. We briefly looked at this one. Just quickly noticing here, it's framed again, just like the other ones. This dark foreground with the waves, the sky here, and the sky is like a gradient. It's darker in the corners, and then the clouds get a little lighter as we get towards. I guess this is the brightest thing, and then another stripe like this. So this is a thing now that I'm noticing. He doesn't do it here actually, but he does it in this one. The stripe along the horizon. That's totally different. Doesn't do it here either. Okay, so just in these two at least. This bit horizontal, and then there's just this shape square in the middle. So this was an album cover. I know that much. It's all these blues and purples except the head of the dragon. We have the yellows and the greens. And very like desaturated along the band here. Yeah, these waves are great. Yeah, there's giant pearl too. Here. So I guess this would be the conversation between these two. But so much that's interesting. The horizon in this one goes off the edge on both sides. The other one it was blocked. But this horizon is very flat, unbroken except by the action in the middle. And it's kind of another gradient. We have the flat horizon, and then we have these kind of the undulating waves, but they're not like crashing. They're not even roiling necessarily. They're more undulating. And then we have the crashing action in the middle. So that's kind of a gradient of movement. This very dynamic movement of the dragon, the very dynamic movement of the water, all these diagonals. The slightly less of the waves, and then the totally flat, placid horizon line. The pearl has a bit of yellow gray and some in the thumb. Oh yeah, there's a bit here, right? In the thumb there. And the pearl has a little bit on the reflected light. A little bit here. The action is directed by value. I'm going to look at the value in just a sec too. Yeah, I think it is. There's a tiny strip of purple on the... There is. I wonder if that is the... Is that the coast? I wonder what's up with that. Yeah, there is a tiny stripe of purple. Playing water polo by himself. You would go on a play date with this serpent? I think you could hang with this serpent. It doesn't look like menacing. It looks like it's seeking. Yeah, faint line of purple, maybe just his transition color. Is it interesting bit there? Maybe it ties this with some of this. Helps us kind of move around. Now that dragon looks darker than I would have guessed as well. I looking in the color one, the dragon looks quite light. But no, it's actually, a lot of it is darker than the clouds behind it. But obviously the foam on those waves and that highlight on the pearl. I really like how the reflected light or the rim light on the bottom of the pearl makes that kind of shape. That kind of crescent. Oh, that's interesting too. I like that these little isolated bits here and here on each side. That's more framing, I think. So he's got us framed with this part, but also just a little bit here and a little bit here. That's a nice touch. I hadn't really noticed it until I started flipping back and forth from the color to the gray. This is more of a, there's another floating island. This looks like a character. And we have a signature finally. The bottom right. Another one of the ripples leading our eye through. Yeah, this great texture. That. Brush strokes. I didn't even notice that this was like, from back here it doesn't immediately read, but look up close. Look at that. This too. But just these brush strokes. Wow. Kind of gritty too. Yeah, that is cool. Kind of losing the edge here. Clever way to get the background to shine through. Bit of scumbling. Light wash compared to everything else. Oops. Let's look at this in grayscale. I'm getting lost just looking at these brush strokes. Not a lot of contrast here. I didn't even notice in the color one, but the most prominent thing in the grayscale one, the thing that jumps out to me is that horizon line. Looks like there might be gouache in the orange highlights. Yeah, I was wondering if this was still watercolor. Some of the technique on there. It looks pointillistic. In the gray, yeah, it does. It has a lot of atmosphere in this grayscale. And this has like back in that first one, those shadows. Just the wild, saturated movement of those shadows. I gotta write down shadows. That's a thing. Shadow action. Shadows with saturation and texture. Variegation. It's bright white horizon line. Yeah, it's almost not noticeable. I mean, it's definitely not the first thing I see in the color one, that horizon line. But in the grayscale, it's like the only white whole thing. I love the water reflection. I like how it's broken up by that ripple. Okay, so the S curves are important here too. And there was triangles. I'm gonna pencil in triangles and S's. Triangles and S adds some movement and helps balance out all the weight. Yeah, that's right. Because in this piece, pretty much, well, yeah, everything, all the whole subject is above the horizon in the top part, and also pushed towards the on the right 2/3. So the left third is basically empty, and then the bottom, this be the bottom quarter, is mostly empty. But we have the ripple and the reflection, the signature down here. So we get this big empty space balancing this out really nicely. The top of the sky is violet. That's right. Yeah, it starts violet, and there's a subtle gradation through this teal and into the white. Loving this use of color, though study one was a little more unsettling. This feels, again, less unsettling than that first one, for whatever reason, even though this probably should be more unsettling. All right, let's look at the last one very quickly. Kind of burn it through these last three. Spent a lot of time on the first three, which is good actually, because spending a lot of time on these, we have a baseline now where we can kind of think about these last ones. Much like most of the other ones, we have this prominent foreground element, maybe some ink on it. Appears much darker, but we'll see if that holds up in the value check. Appears much darker than everything else. And I guess this is our entry point. I climb over it. More of the ripples, more of these S S ripples breaking up the reflections. This tree looks like it's part of the rock. It doesn't look like it's growing out of the rock. It looks like it is the rock. It's the same color. This is very simple colors. The kind of yellow purple, a little bit of the blue. So the blue violet for the ground and the kind of orange yellow for the figure. And then this is like the foil, right? This kind of gray craggy shape. I suppose including this makes this feel even more kind of nice. Yeah, the smoothness of those gradients, right? If I didn't know that these were watercolor, and I still can't believe these are watercolor, but if I didn't know that, I would have guessed that would be airbrush. It looks like it's airbrush. And these shadows, again, like the shadows are less kind of saturated and ethereal, otherworldly than the other paintings, but there's still something really odd about them. And I love the cast shadows, like falling over these. This rhythm is really nice. Here. Yeah, a lot of these rhythms from the cast shadows and then the undersides of these bridges. So this one, unlike some of the other ones, there's not too much triangle action going on. This is all like these parabolas. So this, I guess this one is the least surprising of them all when we're looking at the grayscale. Although that foreground, the light side on that foreground is much darker than I would have thought. Oh, it doesn't even change. It must be completely desaturated in the painting. But it against that background, it looks much darker than in here. Here it looks much closer to the background values. Makes your eyes dance. And yeah, more great atmospheric perspective as well. Another diagonal. Just notice that. Cutting from the bottom left to the top right. Kind of not cutting the composition in half necessarily, but somewhat breaking it up. What a fun study. As always, thank you, Plums Inc., for suggesting another great artist to look at. Uses rough rules of thirds in the last. I feel like he uses some thirds rules in a lot of his works, at least for parts of it. Like it seems like the horizon line is often either on the halfway mark or the third mark. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your ideas about these pieces. It's much better when everybody participates. If you like this artist study and you want to see all of the previous artist studies that we've done, there's a whole big playlist on my YouTube channel of past artist studies.
How are you guys doing? Dandily, I hope.